Hey everybody, a couple of quick things before we get into the episode with Chris today. As you can tell, it's episode 25, so it's a massive milestone to get to a quarter of a century of episodes. We hit over 100 followers or subscribers on all three platforms. The newsletter is absolutely growing, and just wanted to say huge thank you to everyone that has tuned in, got involved and supported the podcast. Really enjoyed doing it. We've had some fascinating conversations with amazing guests, and it's only going to get better. I'm hoping to get a sponsor this year to help us get some more face-to-face podcasts. We're going to the exhibition, the Recruitment Agency Expo in March in London. We'll be doing 2 face-to-face podcasts, so stay tuned for that. And as you may have noticed, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I've recently rebranded the business from Charles Kiriakou Coaching to Infinite Learning, with a 1 in there, which goes quite nicely in with the 1% Better Recruitment podcast. So please go and check out the new website. You can see it through my LinkedIn profile. And if you're within the recruitment sector, feel free to reach out if you want anything to do with coaching, training, business development, recruitment, mindset, all that type of stuff. Please reach out. And yeah, enjoy today's episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment podcast of your host, Charles Kiriakou. Today, I'm joined by Chris O'Connell. Chris, thank you so much for coming on, mate. How are you?
Hey, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me on. I'm well. It's been an eventful year, but a good one.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, today we're going to talk about quite a few different things. And just before we clicked record, we kind of recapped in terms of the sort of topics. And the main things that we're going to go through today are things that I'm really passionate about, which is I love episodes like this: mindset, business development. And for people that may not know Chris, Chris does an awful lot outside of recruitment for his own mental health, for his own mindset, does a lot around the resilience part. But before we get into what we're going to talk about, Chris, it'd be great for, people that may not know you, which, if you're in recruitment, you don't know Chris, you might be living under a rock, to be quite honest. But give us a bit of an introduction, mate. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I had a quite eclectic childhood as well, which we might have time to delve into. But in terms of the business side of things, we'll start there. Joined SThree. I'm sure most people listening know who they are. In 1998. Yeah, I'm that old. I'm 48 next month. So 25 years ago, they're a 1.5 billion pound business, 4,000 people in it, across 60 countries in 20 offices. I became their worldwide top biller, billing 700 grand a year, placing change transformation, project program management contractors, worked my way up there, became a manager and all this kind of stuff, and made them about 15 million quid in 5 years. Brilliant business, brilliant training ground, and learned the art of recruitment. And to be a top biller in that business is no mean feat, if I say so myself. Left there, set up my own business in 2003, got that to 100 people, 25 million pounds turnover, 14 industry awards. I was Southwest Entrepreneur of the Year. And in 9 years, we got it to that amazing level. 3 offices. We had a great kind of model of a third new business, a third kind of where you place 1 or 2, a third where you got key accounts. We had good margins, good culture. Anyway, my business partner walked in one day and said he didn't want to do it anymore. So I did a private equity deal, and I've been very vocal and open about this on many different podcasts and platforms. Unfortunately, the private equity vehicle that came in, they tried to oust a lot of my people, tried to cut corners and costs. And I know most private equity firms do that, but this was beyond. And they wanted to get me out as well. So I had to take them to court. It took me 4 years, cost me 600 grand. And with 2 weeks to go before getting into the High Court, I kind of ran out of money, energy, and I had to do a deal with them. And they knew that out of court for like peanuts really, which didn't even cover my court costs. So I was left with losing the business in a very exposed way, one that I put my heart, my soul, my everything into, and it was done in a very bad way. Got divorced, lost access to my children, had to sell all my assets, moved out of the family homes, living on mates' sofas, almost bankrupt, and tried to end my life 3 times in the space of about a year. It was just, mate, it was just horrific. I'll say it 3 times. It was very difficult, as you might imagine, if your whole purpose life to be taken from you. And obviously I did play a part in that, which I'll go into. So it took me a number of years to even get out of bed, really. Then I came onto LinkedIn. Andrew Silito is a coach. You probably know him, good guy. He invited me onto a webinar to do a talk on my own topic. I chose vulnerability and leadership. That webinar went down really well, and I started to get traction. I started to feel quite comfortable somehow telling my story and being open about it. and started to do some advisory stuff. And since then, mate, in the last 4 years, my LinkedIn's gone crazy. It's not about this, but I get 5-6 million views a month now on LinkedIn. Got 74,000, 75,000 followers. I've got my own podcast, but I've helped over 60 recruitment businesses build, scale, and grow. And that's through a mixture of my knowledge, my expertise, my wisdom, in terms of building businesses operationally, marketing, business development, loads of stuff like that. But also, I think people buy me in terms of or resonate with me, sorry, in terms of my demeanor, my personality, and how kind of, I've used my trauma and my difficulties to better myself and other people. So yeah, there's a long-winded explanation there.
Yeah, mate, that's, I've seen your story like on LinkedIn and I've seen clips from podcasts and things like that, but it's different when you're okay, granted we're on a video call, but it's different when you're like sat in front of someone, right? And they kind of talk through that. And I can't say that I necessarily resonate with the specifics of what you've gone through, but I've been through similar situations and I've talked about this on the podcast and with candidates, clients and whatnot about being in those really, really low positions in life. And I think where you have used that story and used it to catapult you forward and help
Yeah.
other people with it is probably what's made you, obviously you were very successful before, but you've pivoted now from essentially having your own business now to advising and coaching and all the rest of it. And I think some of the
Yeah.
best people that advise and coach typically have had some of the most challenging life experiences and things like that. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I've had a number of coaches myself over the years, and I'd always hire somebody that's gone through the situation they're trying to resolve. Kind of thing. You
Mm,
can have letters after your name, that's all great, but I think you've had to have lived and breathed it yourself to actually be able to give credible advice. And I think that it's not necessarily the successes that define you as a coach or a person. Sometimes the so-called failures and trauma, that's where the gold is, that's where the light is, and that's where I've learned the most, where I've had to dig really deep. So 100%. And I think what I'm liking about LinkedIn at the moment, it has its moments, don't get me wrong, LinkedIn.
mm,
There seems to be a turn in this kind of content where, it's encouraging real authenticity, real vulnerability, and real kind
mm,
of honesty, really.
mm.
So yeah, I'm actually very proud of myself because it's not easy, mate. It's really not easy. For example, I met my sister for the first time on Saturday, and I put a post about that on Saturday, and it did really well. But that it was very difficult. It's not easy putting myself in that position. I don't do it because for any other reason that, to be completely honest with you, it helps me. It helps me
Mm,
process things, and I know it helps other people.
mm.
For me, it's about my purpose is about adding value and having impact on the world, not just how big my business is and how many clients I've got, how many followers I got, all that kind of stuff. But do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I think a good coach harnesses that, and actually, um, you tend to have a longevity on the platform. I've seen people come and go, coaches come and go because
Mhm.
they're selling stuff that isn't, I'll say, isn't real. It's quite a strong statement, but you've got to have substance.
Yeah, yeah, no, I totally agree. You mentioned and touched on when you started your story about like before the business, about childhood and stuff like that.
Mm,
The best episode that I've had so far was with a guy called James Lovell Butt, and I've started working with him, and
mm,
very similar to you, right? He was extremely open about like his upbringing and what happened. Like
yeah.
he runs a multi-million pound recruitment business, and a few years ago, essentially just had like a he just woke up one day and just didn't want to get out of bed. Simple as that.
Mm,
And then he seeked out a therapist, and turns out that he had like really bad anxiety. He became
mm,
depressed. He's got a massive house, beautiful car, beautiful family, got the
yeah.
life that if you look outside, you go, what has this guy got to complain about? But just one day, just everything became too much. And he said it's a very similar thing to you that there's especially for blokes as well, right? Because I'm still learning. I can't say I'm very good at it. I'm trying to be a little bit more vocal about my like feelings and emotions and stuff, but I still really
Yeah.
struggle. And I really think that's mainly down to like as in society growing up,
Yeah.
blokes are just told to just crack on with it, and it's
Yeah.
just so like I don't know how this might sound, but I think it's so beautiful to see more men just being like, do you know what? Fuck it. We're just going to talk about it because we go through shit as well. And it's fucking hard, man. It's really hard. So I was going to ask you, like, if you don't mind, I mean, you don't have to, but you touched a little bit about before
Yeah.
recruitment, like growing up, what was that like?
Yeah, I'll happily tell you. I have to say I'm more emotional than I normally am because my sister thing is overwhelming me. I'll be completely honest with you. That was a phenomenal thing, but I'll explain the context of that. But just before I do that, your point about that is really valid and really important in terms of as men, and please don't get me wrong, women are massively disadvantaged in many aspects of life, aren't they? In terms of
Of
pay,
course.
there's numerous aspects. But if we just focus on men for a minute in particular, I think that we are told that we need to be a certain way with our emotions,
Mm.
and I think that is quite damaging. And I think a strong man doesn't have to be someone with massive muscles who can punch the living daylights out of somebody. A strong man can be, an alpha male, but with feelings and emotions. So I think that's really important. So anyway, yes, I was born in quite a poor upbringing. We lived in a caravan. I was two. My brother was 3 years old. My dad used to work on the railways. He came home after a night shift to find me half naked hanging out the caravan window. My brother had raided the fridge. Basically, my mum had left us there all night, and then fucked off. Never saw her again. Didn't turn up for any of the custody or anything like that. My dad wasn't capable, ready, able to look after us. So I was
Mm.
fostered for 4 years. My dad then took us back, and then he remarried. She was a very, very abusive woman to me. So, my mum leaving me and my stepmom abusing me physically, locking me out of the house, forcing me to do like really, really difficult chores at the ages of 7 and 8 and 9, not doing anything herself was really damaging to my self-worth, really damaging to my confidence. I felt very shy, very unworthy. Used to get beaten up at school, picked on, called a pikey, wearing charity clothes. It was like, but emotionally the damage was horrific. I used to attract the wrong type of woman who used to walk all over me. Often I would ride to the train stations after my paper round and try to jump in front of trains. Even the age of 12, 13, 14, I had suicide ideation, mate. You know, was embarrassed about where I lived. Used to go around my friends' houses, and I remember their mums and dads looking down at me because they could see this kind of sort of feral child almost. Um, so I, yeah, that really it did affect me actually. But I later found out only 5 years ago or 6 years ago from my foster mum. She phoned me up and said, your mum took your dad in. Sorry, your dad took your mum in while she was pregnant with your brother. So basically telling me that my brother isn't my brother. So I did sit on that for 2 years because I didn't know how to tell my brother because I knew
Mm.
it wouldn't be an easy thing for him to accept. So I did tell him a year ago, and now he's not talking to me because he feels as if I've kept a secret for long. And then 6 months ago, I get sorry, 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, I get a message on TikTok saying, I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm your sister.
Fucking hell.
What? I then meet her on Saturday and have an emotional conversation with her. She tells me that my mum has also abandoned two other children. Um, I had another sister called Amber who died of cancer. I've got another sister called Mary. Got another brother called Graham, another brother called David, who I've never seen or spoken to. And my mum constantly has left them overnight or during the day on their own, just abandons children, neglects them, treats them like shit, abuses them, and just so mate, it's to have a sister out of that who's how she's coped, I don't know, she's amazing. Has it's like a gift to me, and I know I'm not alone. It's helped me
Mm.
sort of accept it a little bit, and I think I'm very proud of her. She's a reflection of me. She's very similar to me. She's
Mm.
strong, resilient, you know. So yeah, it's quite a complex life I've had, I think.
Yeah, mate, that's fucking hell. Like I've had a few episodes that I've done where my hairs have gone up and I've like welled up, but just like listening to that and the fact that you can be so candid and open about it as well is it's just that's just crazy, man. That really is. I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but I think I'm a big proponent, and I'm sure you are, with the mindset stuff of really trying to reframe life's events that have happened to us. And
Yeah.
that guy James, I sat down, we had a conversation yesterday, and he talked about how he didn't have a real proper relationship with his dad until he became a dad. And then now he's best mates with his dad. And he was like, he was never a father to me. And I told him about the story of my dad. And yeah, it's just difficult looking back at it. And then he said something to me yesterday. He was like, when you become a dad, the
Yeah.
situation you had with yours, that's a real good reflection of what not to be. And I look at my
Totally.
brother who,
Mm.
he's got a 7-year-old, and, he only found out about him when he was like 9 months old. But put it this way, this sounds ridiculous. My brother's like really dark skinned. Like, he's my biological brother, but my dad is very dark and my mum is quite light. My brother
Yeah.
takes after my dad. His son is very, very dark skinned. His ex-girlfriend is extremely pale and white. Her son was extremely brown. So they were like, oh
Yeah.
shit, it might be Jordan's baby. And my brother is a phenomenal father, like
Mm.
absolutely phenomenal, is like there for him every step of the way. But when Jordan and I sit down and look at each other, we're like, Dad was never there for us. The only time he ever took
No.
us to football games was because he was the coach and he wanted to impress the other mums. He never was there
See,
for us.
you
And
can't
it's
you can't you can't underestimate the damage that that causes. That a parent being there but actually being absent. Sorry to interrupt you there.
that's fine.
But I think that your other point there that you made about being taught how not to parent. I mean, I believe I'm a really good dad. I've got two beautiful. I've actually got three. I've got a 24-year-old as well. I've got two other kids. And I learned so much on how not to do it. And I think I'd never. I
Mm.
think like yourself, I'd never want to put my kids in the same position of feeling like that. So in a kind of a perverse way, I think we were both taught indirectly how to be better people, better men.
Mm. Yeah, no, 100%. And it's the same thing as well, right? Like I've had some, like, I don't like to use the term trauma loosely, but I've had some like
Mm.
traumatic experiences at work with like managers and stuff where like there's certain phrases now that if it pops up in the office, I'm like a consultant now, I'm like self-employed, but if a director would
Yeah,
say like, Charles, have you got a minute? Like I can feel my body go into fight or flight because I've had like traumatic experiences. But when I was a
yeah,
manager, for example, I learned from how bad previous managers were, and I believe that I was a phenomenal leader and a phenomenal manager and led by empathy
yeah.
because of those bad experiences as well.
That's a really perceptive thing. So what I picked up there is that I think everyone's got mental health, everyone's got well-being going on. But what I picked up there is that when you have those anxious feelings, you're relating that to something that's happened in your past, which is fine, which means the actual situation isn't an anxious situation itself. It's not even related to that. So maybe that's a good way of kind of digesting it and going, hang on a second, I'm only feeling this because of what's happened maybe in the past. The situation is a different thing. And I think that can kind of help a little bit.
Mm. Yeah, it's got a lot better. Like I when I left my first proper job in recruitment, and
Mm.
I joined a company called Projectus, it was like the best 6 years of my life. And the first time the MD just pulled me aside, I was like, Charles, you got a minute, and just stormed out. I was like,
Right.
oh shit, I'm gonna
That's
get
not it's
fired.
not great
I'm
communication, is it?
yeah, I was like, I'm just gonna get fired 100%. And you go in the meeting room and it was like, yeah, just wanted to sit you down, mate. Just wanted to let you
Yeah,
know I'm gonna boost your salary up, and I want to make you a manager down the line. I'm like, I thought you were gonna fire me.
I
It's
know.
just
And I
like
think
those little
this
things
is
that trigger you.
this is what ruins relationships, all this trauma and stuff like that. You think your girlfriend or your husband or whatever it might be, he's going to do something, but actually they probably want to spend more time with you. But you just fear the worst in these situations. And I think this is why I'm a big proponent of talking about things, taking
Mm.
action, getting therapy, getting counselling, and yeah, I think the more you can talk about it as well, mate. I encourage you to do that on LinkedIn. I think it will go down really well. I think it's a strength, mate. So
Mm.
I'm pleased we're having this type of conversation. It's important.
Mm. Well, one thing that I have mentioned multiple times on the podcast and on my content, because I I got into a bit of an echo chamber on LinkedIn when I first started to share my story of mental health advocates. And you might disagree with me, and that's fine. But I feel like there's a lot of people that talk about mental health, but that's all they do. They kind of just talk
Mm.
about it. Something that you do that I really like is that you post things like climbing mountains, doing marathons. You've been open about things like therapy, and I've got my own opinions on that. We can talk about it. But what you're doing is you're showing this is what's helping me. You're not saying go to therapy, go and climb a
Right.
mountain, because that
Right.
might not work for someone. You climbing a mountain,
Yes.
I'm sure it was very, very hard, and I've done it before. That might be
Yeah.
hell for somebody else, right? For
Yeah.
me, I like to share my story, the lessons I've learned, and say these are the things that helped me. When I was
100%,
like hit
mate.
rock bottom when I was really young, I done everything so that I didn't have that feeling of waking up and not wanting to continue, right?
Yeah.
So I'd ask you the question then, Chris, like, or maybe I could just do a complete open one. Walk us through or talk us through the things that you've done, because you've explained,
Yeah.
if I dare I say, a terrible upbringing, like some of the things that you've
Yeah.
had to go through, but you've done
Yeah.
so much. Talk us through some of the things that you've done that has helped you move on from those things and build up your
Yeah.
mental resilience and things like that.
I love what you just said there because I always caveat my tips or my advice, my experience with saying, I'm not saying this is right for everybody, but this works for me.
Mm,
So what have I done? Blimey. I spent a lot of time on my own, you know, trying to deliberately be single so I can sit with my feelings instead of, I used to do drink and drugs. Instead of doing that, not do drink and drugs and sit there and feel it, feel the shame, feel the guilt, feel the
mm,
unworthiness, feel the pain, feel the trauma, and actually try not to distract myself and process those feelings and sit with those feelings. I've done many group therapies, into some of the AA meetings, to get an understanding of what all that's about, the
mm,
12 steps and the serenity prayer. I think I've found faith. Well, I have not think I found faith. I have found faith.
mhm,
And I do pray and believe in a higher power and universe. I think that's been really, really important. I've had different coaches, different counselors. I've talked massively openly on LinkedIn, as you well know.
mhm.
And I'm just the sort of guy that I don't really like small talk. If I meet someone new, within 10 minutes, I'm probably waxing lyrical about my story because it's how I am, who I am. So
Mm,
I wasn't nurtured, I wasn't taught how to love, uh, or be loved. I've kind of had to learn it myself. So I've done lots of personal development. I listened to different podcasts. I've massively improved my diet. I've removed loads of friends that were bad influence on me.
mm,
I work out 4 times a week. I've got my affirmations on my phone, my kindness, self-love, honesty.
mm,
I've completely changed and created my Instagram feed that every single thing I see, bar one or two, is either inspirational, motivational, a
mm.
learning thing. So what I try to do is completely unwire all the shit that I had, and then rewire it. And because I've had 40 years of shit. It's taken me quite a while, but I've probably learned and developed more in the last 4 years than I did in the previous 44. So it's just been a multitude of things, mate, and it
Mm.
has not been easy. And I'm still learning, still growing.
Yeah. Well, no, there's so many things there that you've mentioned. What this might be a difficult one for you to answer. What would you say has been the most beneficial for you? Because I know a lot of people. I done therapy, but I only done therapy for like 6 sessions, and I got enough out of it. And I was like, every time I went after the first 4 sessions, it was like I didn't see any more benefit. I
Yeah.
felt like I dealt with the issue. But what would you say was like the biggest thing for you, the biggest change?
Well, I think putting myself in uncomfortable positions, because I think the therapy is good, the coaching is good, as you say, but then it's only as good as the action you take.
Yeah.
It's a bit like a training course or whatever, isn't it? We can talk the theory. So things like climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, I know that's a physical challenge, but for me, I had social anxiety, and I was with this group of 30 people where you're climbing a
Mm,
mountain for 9 days, and it's not easy. I did public speaking at the Recruitment Expo, which I saw you at, a few weeks ago, and normally I was shitting myself, but I nailed
mm,
that. Did the New York Marathon, so I think it's stepping into that power, and taking action
mm.
hasn't been easy for me. So I think generally what I find is, and that sounds quite an obvious answer, but actually looking after my physical health has led my
Mm.
mental health to be a lot better. So if there was one thing, I'd say try and exercise and eat well, because then that leads to the rest of the decisions being
Mm.
good sleep, all that kind of stuff. But I think just to finish that bit off though, using LinkedIn as an example, I think on my early days of LinkedIn, I was posting to get some likes, to be honest with you,
Hmm.
posting to get the validation, obviously posting to get the business as well. But now I post to add value, and I don't care what people think, not in a flippant, arrogant way, but literally,
Mm.
if I feel it's right, I will do it, and I won't water it down. And I think being comfortable in my own skin has been the
Mm.
big game changing thing, which still a process, mate. You know.
Yeah, no, it 100% is. That's certainly something there's two things there that I'll unpack. The last thing that you said, sorry, is certainly something that I've been a big proponent of and I think it's the way that I was brought up by my mum, and I've mentioned her multiple times on the podcast, but she always told me not to be a sheep. She always told me not to fit in with everybody else because then you'll
Yeah,
just be another robot in society.
yeah,
She always used to say, like, look, you don't want to be a sheep, you want to be a wolf. And if you have to be a wolf in sheep's clothing to fit in temporarily and then go off and go and do your own thing, do your own thing. And similar
so,
to what you said, I was bullied in the workplace, bullied at school multiple times because I never fit in. And, with the ADHD as well, especially when I didn't really know what that was and didn't know how many other people had it, naturally you
yeah,
do see the world in a different position. You do see things differently. So you're naturally going to stick out. But I think maybe when I was like mid 20s, late 20s, because I'm turning 31 soon, that's when I started to realize actually I'm fucking good at what I do. I'm actually a nice person. I actually care about people.
hundred
Like, who
percent.
cares if somebody on LinkedIn comments and goes, "You're annoying," or someone in the office goes, "Oh,
Yeah,
you're loud," or whatever. Who gives a fuck? Like, I'm secure in myself. I'm
totally.
gonna do my thing. I'm gonna live by my values and my vision. Who cares?
That's exact, mate. You're speaking my language, is what I say. I always say improve, not impress, and it's what you think of you that counts. Be your own biggest supporter. Absolutely, it's you're in a dangerous situation where you're judging your self-worth by what other people say and think about you. Obviously, you want to be liked and all that kind of stuff, but you never fucking please everybody anyway. So, I think when you get to that point, you start to have confidence in yourself. Also, what builds confidence, I think, is saying what you're going to do. What I mean by that is if you say you're going to do something and you do it, even if it's small or big, that builds confidence. And I
Mm,
think that's a good thing. It's you want to be impressing yourself, not other
mm.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, the whiteboard behind me here, you probably can't read it, but I set myself like goals or like personal and professional targets for the month, and then I do like a week plan, and then my
Yeah.
days are organized via my Google Calendar. So I just have like my invites and whatnot. And what I've started to do, and I'm sure you all appreciate this, is I take a picture of the whiteboard every Monday where I've got like a green pen and I've ticked through the ones that I've done. And whenever I have days where I feel overwhelmed or the imposter syndrome voice starts to get a little bit loud, I go on the album on my phone, I look through, and
Mm.
every single picture is me just absolutely annihilating the goals. And then I look back at when I first set my business up or when I first got into recruitment, how far I've come. You don't need that
Right.
validation from people. I hear so many people that like they need their mum, their dad, their partner, their colleague to say you're good. You don't need that. Sure, it might
You know
help.
what? Yeah. I love that. So you're evidencing yourself that you're making progress. Because no one else is gonna you need that. No one else is gonna tell you the pack. That's a really good takeaway actually. I know you're interviewing me, but I think that particularly as solopreneurs, and there's many more solopreneurs now than there ever has been.
Mm,
I think you do a good post on LinkedIn, you get loads of likes and stuff like that, and you get that little buzz and you seek it. But that's not going to. It's like you're forever chasing it, and you got to do it your way. You've got to do it tangible. How have I moved the dial in my life, in my personal development, in my business, that kind of stuff? What have I done to? And that's I think it's so important. And also it's important to take a break as well. I think if you look at the
mm,
logos behind me, there's six things there. Part of my base mindset is business, personal development, health and fitness,
mm,
purpose, relationships, and finance. And I think it's
mm,
things like if you have bad relationships outside of work, you tend to have bad relationships inside of work. So
mm,
what you said there about the business task is really, really important. But also it's important that you don't take your eye off the gas, like your eyes off things like those other elements as well. And I think where I
mm.
went wrong was I put all my eggs in the business basket, but everything else was shit. So,
Yeah. And do you know what? It's people like yourself and when I was probably 25 years old, that's when I started to curate my social media with
Yeah.
very successful entrepreneurs, and I started to network with founders when I was 25 because I always knew I wanted to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And that reoccurring theme of, make sure you look after your sanity, your mental health, and make sure that you don't just put everything into business. And I think you all agree that, when you're in recruitment, you're earning loads of money and, you're going on lunch clubs and you're going to Ibiza and all the rest of it. Ego can become a massive thing, and I've actually spoken about this on the podcast. I think one thing that I'm really really grateful for is that when I was in my mid 20s, I started to read loads of books about ego. And
Yeah.
I started to research about things like psychedelics, for example, which essentially shatter your ego and make you reflect internally and stop you from thinking about things like material things. Probably
Mm.
why I moved away from sales, because I was like not interested by doing the deal and getting the cash, but I was more interested in my actual life passion, which was developing and coaching other people. So I think
Right.
the fact that I kind of went through that at such a young age, I'm now in a position where, touch wood, I don't have any of the alcohol, drug problems. I have my ego is very much in check. Don't get me wrong, I have my ego that allows me
Mm.
to drive. I want to be one of the best in the industry, but it's not egomania. It's not,
Yeah.
stopping me from living how I am, my values, and all the rest of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've learned that the hard way. I was all about the watches, the houses, the cars, and all that kind of stuff. I was judging my self-worth on that. And I think
Mhm.
that it's also important to, I think, have a relationship with money though. I think
Mm.
if we're kind of pushing money away and say it's not important, I think that's wrong. I don't think it's the number one thing. So do you know what I'm trying to say there?
Yeah, I
It's
know
a
exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
sometimes, so I think if you put purpose before profit, you get profit as well. But I think where I went wrong was I went from one extreme to the other. I was missed the money, then I was like, what happened to me? I then started to resent money.
Mm.
Um, but now I realize actually be money focused, but don't make it, the be all and end all. But I
Mm.
think it's about attention as well, right? And
Mm.
I think going on to LinkedIn without being too derogatory about others, there are some great people on LinkedIn that offer a very valid and viable and purpose-driven service. But there's also a lot of charlatans out there that
Hmm.
that that I'm pleased about they're falling by the wayside a little bit. But I think with you and me, I think it's very clear we want to add value, and that's our primary goal. But we've got to pay the bills.
Yeah, exactly that, mate. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I have many, many debates with one of my friends. He's quite like religious, quite spiritual. He follows Hinduism,
Yeah.
and he went through a similar type of mindset to yourself, where he started to resent money, and. He's like, I can't remember what he specifically said about it, but I was like, essentially, money makes the world go round. Like, without money, like,
Yeah.
and basically his point was, I'm kind of fluffing my words here, but his point was is that like too many people focus solely on money and there's more to life than money. And I said to him, like, what's the most like important thing to you? Like, what would your sort of dream be? And his dream would just be able to travel the world, do what he wants when he wants. Well, newsflash, mate, you need money to do that in this society, in this
Yes.
world.
Yeah.
Like I'm not necessarily motivated, probably like yourself, anymore by watches. I've got a Cartier watch in my drawer that's been collecting dust for 3 years. I don't wear it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, what's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
point? The things
Yeah.
I'm doing now, and I spoke to a client last night, yesterday. I want to get a new patio and I want to get an outdoor gym so I don't have to have a gym drive to the gym, and I want to have an outdoor sauna. I want to have an absolute the
Nice.
bollocks cold plunge and that type of shit. That's where my money's going these days. Like, it's
100%.
totally different to getting designer clothes and all that type of stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the difference. That's when you start making money, you're then reinvesting it in yourself. And I think it's the difference. I think, when you start making money, then you're spending it on stuff that's material. Don't get me wrong, but everyone's different. But I'm all about continuing improvement and growth.
Mm.
And I think I've tried the cold plunges. I still can't get my head around those though.
My hands are still freezing cold as we speak.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the feet that gets me on those. The feet, I can't handle the feet anyway.
Yeah, it's rough, mate. But one thing that you were mentioning earlier about, like, climb the mountain, doing the marathon, doing all these things out of your comfort zone. It kind of like pivots really, really easily into something I wanted to speak to you about business development, because I know you're really, really passionate about that side of things and you've got great experience around it. But there's something that I do with recruiters and with founders these days that you see people's heads go like, oh, really? When I sit down with recruiters, and I'm sure you, because you advise for a lot of companies, right?
Yeah.
Especially a lot of the younger generation, so much anxiety, people constantly comparing themselves to other people on social media. What we said there about comparing yourself to your yesterday self and things like that is
Yeah.
great. But I always say to people when I do a coaching session and I set them some action points like, chase your leads at this time or whatever, I
Mm.
always say to them, I want you to do something outside of work. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's down to
Yeah.
you because it needs to
Mm.
come from you. I want you to go and do something that is mildly out of your comfort zone. Because if you do it way too out of your comfort zone, it's going to scare you and you're not going to want to do it. I want
Yeah.
you to do something that's
Yeah.
mildly out of your comfort zone. And that's going to then help you with your anxiety, help you with your resilience. And I want you to report back to me in our coaching session next week. And
Mm.
Chris, I'm telling you now, every single recruiter that wants to improve, that wants to kind of, shift their anxiety aside, get better at business development, become a more
Yeah.
resilient person, they will
Yeah.
always go away and they'll say, do you know what I done? I went for a run without
Yeah.
headphones, or I done this, and it was
100%.
really hard. But guess what? Because I done that thing that was
Yeah.
hard, speaking to a client on the end of the phone, I'm not worried if they say
Yeah.
fuck off.
Yeah, I love that. I do the same sort of thing. I ask them what are your marginal gains this week. So what's the one or two things you're going to do slightly differently? It might be
Mm,
to make that extra call or whatever it might be. But it just builds that resilience. And actually,
mm,
I think the more no's we get, the closer we are to a yes. And I think there's this thing around, getting a no is the worst thing in the world, and it's like this irrational fear. But like getting a
mm,
no, to me, a no is not a no. We can turn things around. But I think the chances of you phoning up a manager, for example, if you was to make a cold call and that person to say, Charles, I can't believe you phoned me. What great timing. I'm looking for three MDs and I want an exclusive partner. I'm going to sign with you. It's very, very unlikely. Of course, you're going to get those along that way, but it's not a personal thing, right? So I,
mm,
I, I think that you're right. Also, it's not often not what's going inside work. You can create the best framework for them and the best training for them, but if their mindset's
mm.
not right outside of work, so to your point, 100%, it's understanding what makes them tick and building that kind of like every time you get a little win like that inside outside of work, it breeds
Mm.
success and confidence. So yeah, I love that.
Mm, mm. So what things do you go through with business owners, recruiters, and things like that around business development? Because I've my whole business is essentially around BD because that's my main strength, that's my main passion within the field of
Yeah,
recruitment. And I think that there's a lot of stuff out there there's a lot of conflicting things, there's different approaches, different types of cold calls, there's different types of strategies.
yeah,
It's like when you go online to see what the best workout regime is. Like I've done that and
yeah.
I'm like, there's just too fucking much,
Oh,
right? But for me, I like things that are really, really simple, like really, really simple. There's no need to overcomplicate
yeah,
it. So if I was
yeah,
setting up a business with someone and we had like minimal recruitment experience,
yeah,
what how, what would you do if you were to come and advise us and talk to us about
yeah.
setting up our BD strategy or attacking a new market? Like what would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, I did a webinar about this very thing on Friday. Before I just delve into the BD thing, I think it's really important that as a business, whether you're on your own or consultant or whatever, you understand where you are now, where you're going to get to, and how you're going to get there. You need to have a vision. You need
Mm,
to have
hmm
a way of understanding what you're going to get to. But a lot of agencies or consultants, they say they're specialists, but they're not.
mm,
And I think I'm a big proponent of using the knowledge as power and confidence. So one of the first things I would suggest is, as an example, right? A Java consultant came to me and said, Chris, so I'm specking out Java candidates to America.
mm,
I'm not really getting anywhere. And I said, what, you're specking out Java candidates to everybody? And he went, yeah. And I said, well, put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes. I'm a hiring manager. I work for a fintech business and you're sending me Java candidates. I take on Java people, so I might be interested. But if you start specking me Java candidates that worked at three of my fintech competitors, I'm definitely going to be interested. So why don't you then spend 2 or 3 weeks speaking to as many Java candidates as possible within fintech, draw up a top 30, really immerse yourself in the market, understand the
mm,
terminology, the people, the clients, that kind of stuff. But when you pitch your candidate, I think a lot of agencies they treat candidates and clients differently. it's having that right pitch with the candidate.
Mm,
Hi, Mr. Candidate. It's Charles from, and name dropping competitors where you can work.
mm,
So for me it's about segmenting the market down, drawing up a top 30, knowing the players, name
mm,
dropping them, and building out a systematic approach. But also touch points are really important as well.
mm-hmm.
Again, this isn't revolutionary, but I think that a lot of people they'll send out a CV or they'll make one phone call. I think that's it. It takes the fourth, fifth, or sixth touch point for a client to come back. So it's all in the follow up. So I break it down, I segment it. Also, time management as well. I
Mm,
think I don't care if you've got one job on or 300 jobs on, you can find time to BD. And it's
mm,
about, like your stuff is like, if it's a Tuesday and Thursday between 12 and 2, that's your BD time no matter what. Have a BD mindset. Every call's an opportunity. So it's mapping it out. It's not just specking out candidates. There's different ways to do it, isn't there? But
mm.
I think that you've got to follow a process and know what you're doing for the week ahead. Have it mapped out. Have your clients ready. You want to be in a position where you get a good candidate and you know exactly where to put that candidate. You get a good
Mm.
role and you've already got the candidates. What I think happens is people are in survival mode. They just try and grab a vacancy and they're starting fresh candidate pools again. Have an eye on the medium term as well, and
Hmm.
you can build it out that way.
I totally agree. Something that my old sales director used to do with us, because we had like four managers, we used to report into the sales director, and he used to come over to my team and say like, "Where's your next job coming from?" And I'd be like, "Oh, well, wait a minute, pull it up on the database. And don't care about I don't want you to give me
Yeah,
lip service. So pull up the database, and he'd look at my leads, like my team's leads." And he went, "So which one of these is going to drop?" Oh, don't give me lip service, mate. Click on it and show me. Because if it isn't on the system, it don't fucking exist. And because
yeah,
he was so militant with that approach, it helped me and my team because we knew whenever he came over to the desk and said, "Where's your next job coming from?" You can just pull the leads list up and go, "Right, there's a job here
yeah,
with base mindset. Chris is the hiring manager. He's looking for a
yeah, yeah.
sales rep with 5 years experience. I've spec'd out these five people. He's already in an
Totally.
email campaign.
You've got that
I've already
ingrained
connected
in.
with him." It's just all there. And he would just sit there,
Yeah,
smile and go, "Cool. All right. So when do you think that will drop?" "Well, I've got a call with the hiring manager this day." "Okay, cool. So next week." Brilliant. That way
yeah,
there, I just knew I was so organized, I was so regimented, and it was all on the database, and I knew what my lead chasing process was. I knew who my
yeah,
target companies were.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, it blows my mind how many recruitment businesses and recruitment consultants don't have such a simple lead chasing
Oh,
process.
well,
It blows my
the
mind.
lead generation is should be ingrained in you actually, whether you're speaking to candidates or clients. But what's been quite shocking for me this year. I mean, it's been a horrible year for recruitment, but it's been a great year for me because clients are coming to me because they don't know how to BD, right? So there's a lot of sort of, dare I say, self-entitled recruiters that had it really good in 22, 23, where the roles were just coming in. Now they don't want to BD, don't know how to BD, or don't think they need to BD.
Mm,
But secondly, I think they get delusions of grandeur, right? They qualified the JD brilliantly, fantastic, know exactly what the role is, but they didn't qualify the process.
mm,
So you've got to be closing the client down and try to pitch it, retain, try to pitch exclusive, try to get interview slots, and kind of like work on roles where you can see the deal, where you're doing, and I think a lot of time is wasted on roles that sound great, but the client's not going to make a decision. And the same with candidates as well. You can qualify that can be the best candidate for the role on paper, but if he's got five other interviews and won't actually leave, then he's not a good candidate. And it sounds basic, but I think we miss these basics so often.
yeah, no, we 100% do. The I'd say probably aside from like lead generation, chasing process, one of the biggest issues, and I'd be keen to see your insights because obviously you work with a ton of different recruitment businesses as well, is that basic BD strategy and organization. Pretty much every business that I worked with this year, I go in and I'm like, right, cool. You say you're specialist in construction, renewables, sale, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, what does that actually mean? What is your ICP? Cool. Let me see your target list. And pretty much everyone I sit down with, I'm like, so you have 1,000 contacts on a target list.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
doesn't sound
yeah, yeah,
awfully niche at all. Like, how are you going to get
yeah,
through 1,000 contacts? Okay, cool. Which ones
yeah,
are hiring? Oh, okay. Well, this one's
yeah,
advertising on their website. This one's advertising on LinkedIn. So every other fucking recruiter is going to be chasing that one. Like,
totally.
how are you organizing this? Like, and I
Mm.
want to just preface this as well that when I was in recruitment and people think I'm mental for this, I didn't have a lead generation or lead chasing process. I didn't. My whole thing was I have more energy than anyone. I have more passion than anyone. I am better at
Great.
building relationships. So what
Yeah.
I will do is I will speak to fucking everyone. I'll become best mates with everyone in the market
Yeah.
and people give me jobs. But when the market pivots and changes and there's things that happen, you can't rely on essentially being a maverick. You have to have a
No.
process.
I love that. I instigate what I call traffic light system, where you can have your green clients where you've got live roles, interviews, jobs, amber clients where you know they're going to be looking in the medium term, and you're nurturing it, and then red clients where they're your target clients. And
Mm,
for me, it's not how many greens you've got, it's what ambers and reds you've got. What are you doing to nurture that
mm,
funnel? And that's a mixture of different business development techniques, 100%. But I think that there's so much information from candidates, but also things like, I always try to get them to have 3 to 5 managers on their system per company, not
mm,
just one, all that kind of
mm,
stuff. You can go back into clients, and the amount of opportunities that you're missing by not landing and expanding, going up the chain a little bit, selling different services. So there's different ways to BD. If your team is worried and cautious and nervous about it, ease them into it, ease them
mm,
into it. But I'm a big fan of doing role plays, all
mm.
that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think you and me are cut from a very similar cloth, I think.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I agree. So for a recruiter then that is starting their business development journey, right? Because a lot of businesses, and I've got my own opinion on how soon you should get someone into BD. I think you should get someone into BD immediately, in my personal opinion. I do understand the reservation because you want them to understand more about the market. So I understand both
Yeah.
sides. But let's just say you've got a trainee recruiter or recruitment consultant that's starting their business development journey. They're listening to this right now. They're shit in the bed. They're like, right, I've got to go into work tomorrow and I've got to go and cold call and speak to clients. What would you say is like your top 2 to 3 bits of advice for someone starting out in BD?
Well, I do think knowledge is power. I do think the more knowledge and understanding you have, the more confident you are. So this is why I'm saying if you can segment the market out and like what you said, don't have 1,000 people, have a top 30 that are in a specific area, do some research
Mm,
first. But it's a lot of it is all in the pitch. I think where recruitment consultancies go wrong, or hi, they do this massive, long-winded, obvious thing. Hi, it's Chris O'Connell from Recruitment, John Recruitment Limited. I'm about to talk to you about all the recruitment things you're going. It's like no, what's in it for the client? How I would do it. So say we was a software engineering recruiter, right?
mm,
Business. I wouldn't say it's Chris from Software Engineering Recruitment Limited. We're a specialist software engineering recruitment business. I'd segment the industry sectors. I'd do vertical into horizontal. So I'd do retail or e-commerce or
mm,
financial services, wherever it might be. I'd say it's fintech.
mm,
I would then my introduction to the client would be very simple. Hi, it's Chris O'Connell from Base Mindset Limited. We're a specialist software engineer consultancy, particularly in the fintech space. We're working with the likes of name drop 2 competitors.
mm,
I've got 2 candidates that have worked at, and I want to get them across to you to discuss that. Really simple. And that
mm,
sounds like what I'm trying to say is that you don't have to um, overdo it, but describe your solution in 10 seconds. Often it's where have you done it before and what have you got for me? Do you know what I
mm,
mean? So
mhm,
I think it's just being precise in your introduction and don't put the client on a pedestal. I think the mindset is so
mm.
important. I think when we're going in and going, please sir, can I have small vacancies? They smell that on the other end of the phone, don't they?
Yeah.
So you've got to position yourself as almost qualifying the client out. Is this client good enough to work with me, not the other way around?
Mm,
And I think you've got to position yourself as the solution. In fact, so one of the first things I do is I ask them, so who are you? And they'll say, I'm a recruitment consultant. I say, no, you're not. You're a solutions provider. So all that
mm,
kind of stuff's really important.
mm. There's so much that you said there that I resonate with so much. And my old sales director always used to say, and my managing director as well, actually, avoid using the word recruitment. And I went through this in a training session with a new client of mine yesterday. And I said, everyone in their mind has buzzwords, right? So if you
Yeah.
said to me, what's the first thing that you think of when I say hospital? I think of, mum almost dying, grandparents dying in front of me, that, bad. Other
Mm.
people, I've said this too, people go hospital, oh, place of healing where people save people. It's like,
Yeah,
cool. What
of
about a
course.
quiz or school? For me, quiz, trauma, school, trauma. For other people, learning, fun.
Yeah.
Recruitment for me, passion, love it. Industry I've been in for
Yeah.
nearly 11 years. For a client is
Yeah,
being ghosted, shit
yeah,
service, sending me
yeah,
terrible CVs, making me
totally.
look like an idiot in front of my hiring manager. So I went through this in my old company when I was the L&D manager, and they were like, don't overcomplicate it. We are recruiters. We need to be proud of being recruiters. I'm not disputing that, but
Mm,
unfortunately, a lot of your clients and hiring managers, they
doing the
hear the
same
term
shit.
recruiter and they
Yeah,
just go, right, I'm immediately switched off. So
yeah.
what was the thing that you said? It was like because we used to use like a talent advisor or an extension of your brand. There's various
Yeah,
different
hi,
other
hi, hi.
terms.
It's Chris from Base Mindset Limited. We're a specialist software development talent consultancy operating specifically in the fintech space. We're working with the likes of competitor X, competitor Y.
Mm,
I've got a really strong guy that's calling my books that has just left there actually, and it's expressed an interest to work for you. Let's have a chat. You know, I mean, how could, well, for me, that's like, fuck me, I want to listen. You know what I mean? Nothing to,
mm,
yes, it's the same. I'm a recruiter, but I'm not a recruiter. That's the difference, isn't it?
mm.
Um,
Yeah,
how does that sound to you?
yeah. There's another one as well that I think yeah, you'll probably agree with me on this. It kind of gives me the ick when I hear recruiters go, "I'm working with some incredible candidates."
Mm.
Right. Okay.
Seems blasé.
What does that
Yeah,
mean? Like I'm
yeah,
working with some of your competitors. Right. Okay,
yeah.
cool. What you've said, Chris, and I want to echo this for people listening and watching. If you have worked with their competitors or companies in a similar space, name drop them. Especially,
Yes.
I've got a girl that I coach who she does like 10x engineers in the States, and she what she does really well is that she doesn't just name drop the business. She'll name drop the business and said, "I've worked with a competitor of yours. You might be familiar with them. Base Mindset. The guy I helped there is the founder. It's a guy called Chris
100%.
O'Connell. Are you familiar with him? I see you're
100%.
connected with him on LinkedIn." They go, "Yeah, I know Chris. Yeah, we worked at the same business." It's like, well, if you ever speak to Chris, he can vouch for what I do. Also, I'm working with an amazing candidate at the moment. Why they're amazing is because they've worked for two of your competitors. They've got 10 years experience and they're qualified in all these areas. I thought it'd be crazy for me not to just reach out
Yeah.
to you, seeing as I've
That's
helped
all.
Chris.
That's all it is. And then you've got immediate credibility. They don't care if you've got 1 day experience or five. Literally like it's hard to say no to that almost, isn't it? Um, and that's for me, you and I, what we're trying to do. So what they said about simplifying it, it's right, but that's how you simplify it. You don't just
Mm,
simplify it by doing less.
mm,
And that's why I think that you don't need 1,000 clients. It's also how do you measure what a good day is or a good week? It's not the number of calls. Obviously, quantity is important, but it's the number of
hmm.
conversations you're having,
Yeah.
tangible conversations you're having on a weekly basis. You start measuring that,
Mm,
then you know what you're doing, right?
100%. So you've been in the recruitment space for a very long time. I think
Mm.
since COVID, recruitment has changed so much. For context, I never worked from home pre-COVID. I never had a laptop pre-COVID. We never had any automation tools. We had Linked Helper at one point, and that got
Yeah.
banned. Lol. There was a few other things, but the recruitment space has really evolved and really changed. And something that I say to businesses when I go in, and it sounds like you're very similar to me, is that I'm very
Yeah.
hybrid in respects to I started in 2014 where we used to fax things. I'm not even that old, but I
Yeah, I
know the
know.
old school stuff. My first
Yeah.
day on doing nursing recruitment was just call through 2,000 contacts with all the private hospitals, like old school, just fucking telephone bashing, all the rest of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I've also been in a tech recruitment startup and worked with a few very niche startups at the minute that are completely immersed with tech and AI and email
Yeah.
marketing campaigns, all that type of stuff. But I think the recruitment industry, and especially around BD, it has really changed a lot since COVID. From your perspective, working with so many different businesses, what have you seen as like the biggest shifts in both the recruitment industry and the recruiters that are now coming through?
Well, a nod to our friend Alex Dick, who loves the whole work from anywhere, work from home thing.
Yeah.
Had a bit of, I've had a few debates with him about that. I don't feel as if you can build a world class or a decent enough culture just completely work from home. So
Mm,
I think the hybrid model is good. I think when COVID happened, people they started to jump on the bandwagon about the office being horrendous. But now I think we can see that people want it back. It's coming
mm,
back. So I think what does work well is that flexibility where do at least 2 to 3 days in the office and have that flexibility at home. I
mm,
think I think in terms of productivity, I think that's ultra productive because you can kind of do all your Zoom meetings at home and all that kind of stuff
Mm,
and come into the office. So for me, I think you've got to have a culture in the office, and I think that we used to slate the kind of like incentives of going away on holiday and all that kind of stuff. But I think
mm,
COVID with your team, but I think COVID has affected a lot of people mentally, and they do want
mhm,
collaboration. They do want a sense of face-to-face stuff. So I think it's finding that balance. But I think that the businesses are starting to dictate a bit more now, whereas post-COVID, the employer or the consultant was like
mm,
demanding quite a lot, I think, and actually it's quite hard to be a business owner. So I think people do want to be. I think vision, mission, and values is really important. I think it's underestimated, and I
mm,
think most people don't just want a job; they want a future,
mm.
progression. So if you can get that bit right as well and start to promote people on their competencies, I think that's how you're going to grow your business.
Mm. That's something that I go through with every startup I work with is really understanding their values and what their progression structure looks like, both on a competency behavioral basis and financial as well. Because if you've got a
Yeah.
lovely person that's very hardworking, but they've built nothing in the entire year, then, anyway, that's a whole other story. What about in terms of like the differences in how people recruit? Because when I was in recruitment, like if I go back to 2018, 2017, 2018, which was I would say like my peak BD years where I was winning retainers left, right, and center, we had a culture of not really caring about cold calling, not really caring about getting out there and going for coffees and stuff. But we
Yeah.
had people in the office that were better. Like I was terrible at spec outs. Like my attention to detail was awful. But if you gave me someone's number, I'll become their best friend immediately.
Yeah.
But nowadays I go into a lot of recruitment businesses, and this is like the age-old thing you see on LinkedIn that it's like a library in a lot of recruitment offices because all you can hear is people's like laptops
Yeah.
clicking, clicking, clicking.
Yeah.
And I've had some debates with some of my clients that, some people they get a lot of their business through spec outs, but they're not just specking out. And by the way, I have seen this. They're not just specking out, getting a job brief on email and working the job. They're
Yeah.
getting availability to jump on a Google Meet or a Zoom, getting the brief on and all the rest
Yeah.
of it. But what would you say is like, yeah, what have you noticed since COVID around the types of recruiters when it comes to things like BD and where I mentioned, offices at the minute are
Oh,
like bloody libraries. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
this is a good point. I mean, I've been disappointed with some of the findings I've made where I've seen a lot of these 180 delivery teams, and
Mm.
I know there's a place for it, but I'm old school 360, but that's another argument. Where they're qualifying candidates just on email. I mean, how the hell can you qualify a candidate just on email? Is that like literally hiding behind their keyboard because it's either lazy or they're too scared? So that's the wrong end of what COVID did in a negative form was kind of like take away that human touch, that
Mm.
conversation where back in the day the only way to communicate was via the phone. So I think that trying to unwire that is
Mm.
key, and I think you've got to have a certain number of conversations. Um, but I think the phone, I think is and the cold calling is deemed as this kind of like old school thing that's past its sell by date. I think that's nonsense. I think it's having a
Mm.
renaissance actually. But I would sooner voice note or drop a video on WhatsApp than leave an email. Or I mean, I don't even.
Mm.
I don't text message anymore. I only do WhatsApp. I don't
Mm.
really email anymore. So I think it's about what's the best way to form a relationship. Uh, Tonality. So that's voice notes rather than
Mm.
emails. Because an email can be
Mm.
misconstrued, can't it?
Mhm.
I love these Loom videos or these little short videos you can send on
Mm.
WhatsApp as well. So it's just I'm not saying do anything different, do anything different, but just it's the type of
Mm.
communication that's important, I think.
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree. Something that I say to people all the time, and my old directors always used to say this, is that an email or a message will entice someone, but you'll never
Yeah.
influence someone. And the best way to influence is obviously in person, and then you've got a video call and then a phone call. And I'm sure you've seen this. It's the Albert Mehrabian communication model, where it's like 7% is by what you say, 32%
Yeah.
or 37% is like how you say it, your tone, and then 52% or whatever the specific number is your non-verbal, like your body
Yeah.
language and stuff. That's why I'm
Yeah.
such a proponent of, like, if a client comes back to you, rather than say that, let's arrange time to speak, jump on a video call, like
100%.
see what their
100%.
facial expressions are.
Yeah, but there's also things like, even things like the offer. Like I always say, so how's this offer being presented? Oh, well, they're just going to email it to me and I'm going to email it to the client. So what? You've been working this role for 3 months, 150 grand salary, and you want to present an offer at the end like that? Let's all get on the phone with the client and the candidate, do a three-way offer. It's that kind of stuff.
Mm.
It's obvious, but it's not to some people. And I think when you're qualifying a JD, why not do that in person or on a Zoom as opposed to even a phone call? It's just having that level of awareness, but also on the candidate journey. The candidate's dropped out. When was the last time you spoke to him? I spoke to him a week ago. He sent me a text. Pick up the phone, have a Zoom with him, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Well, look, I'm conscious of time, Chris. As you know, the last question I finish up the podcast is with, following today's episode, how do people get 1% better in recruitment?
That's a really, really good question. I think I'll actually use your suggestion of doing one thing out of your comfort zone that you haven't done before. If you don't change, you don't change. So whether that's going for an extra walk or a run or making another, two or three different phone calls, or having the courage to pick up the phone, do something that's going to change the game, and you'll get that 1%.
Absolutely love it, mate. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure. I didn't expect, like, honestly, my hairs were up for like the first 30 minutes of talking to you about all the stuff in your childhood and stuff. Like, genuinely, thank you for being open and courageous to talk about that on the show. Like, I think anyone that's got this far in the podcast's like lifespan will know that from literally the first few episodes, it's a place where people can come and talk about these things, and not only just talk about things and spread awareness, but offer solutions that have helped us that might be able to help other people. And I think overall, mate, you've added a tremendous amount of value. I've learned new things. It's been great to get to know you a little bit better. I'm assuming in terms of like, recruiters and business owners, the best way to reach out to you is LinkedIn. Is there any other things that you've got going on that you want to sort of talk about?
LinkedIn's good. Thank you, mate. I'm doing a community myself and a platform. I've got sort of a mastermind thing coming up. I've got loads of exciting stuff coming up next year. But I want to say thank you to you, mate. I think what you're doing is brilliant. We're similar minded, and I've really enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, let's keep supporting each other, mate. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, mate. Thank you so much. And for anyone that's got this far as well, as you know, on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, please subscribe, all that type of carry on, because it does help. I'm not really caring too much about analytics these days because I just genuinely love speaking to awesome people like Chris. But obviously down the line, the more people that this can go out to, it's not just going to help one person, it will help multiple. And that's the ultimate goal of the podcast. So yeah, everyone that has tuned in, thank you very much. Thank you to Chris, and until next time.